Hi, I'm Danielle Bassoni, back with another episode of Time for Change Kitchen. Today we are going to make two different kinds of cashew cream cheese. And the first one we'll be making with miso and with garlic and lemon. And this will give us a cheesier flavor than the second one, which is more like a Philadelphia cream cheese. This flavor is a little more complex, and one of the reasons I really like this cheese is that I don't have to add salt to it. Instead, I'm using miso, which contains quite a bit of sodium, but apparently the soy in miso mitigates the damage from the to our arteries from the sodium. And so we'll put this in, and then we're adding 2 medium cloves of garlic, or 1 large clove, and 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. This is such an easy recipe, and I would use this type of cheese if I were wanting a more cheesy flavor. It's very good as a dip for example, apples, or as a spread for bagels or toast, or anything that you want a little bit of a cheesy flavor to. We're going to be adding water, but we'll do that after we grind this up a little bit. So we'll put this in our Vitamix. We will wear our earplugs because we're concerned about our health and our ear safety. And we're just going to turn this on low to begin with. I want to mention that you pretty much need a high-powered blender to make this cheese. And we're going to add a little bit of water. I've got a cup of water here. I doubt that we'll be using all of it. Another thing about this cheese is that it tends to be a little darker than the other cheese. So if the color matters to you, then that's something to take into consideration. We'll pull some of this away from the edges to make sure it's all ground up. You want to make sure that all of the cashews are thoroughly ground. Now these are not quite, this is not quite ground enough, but I just wanted to show you the texture of this. It still has a few lumps of cashews, and we want to get rid of that, so I'm going to add a little more water. One of the things I want to caution you about is that you don't want it too thick, because this will continue to thicken as you put it in your refrigerator. So far we've used about half a cup of water. Now that's perfect. See how creamy it is? Now I want to taste it and make sure we don't want to add more miso to it. This is absolutely perfect. Now we are going to transfer it to a Pyrex dish. And okay, So we're going to transfer this now, and I don't know if I mentioned that I used a tablespoon of miso. And miso is an organic, the miso I use is an organic, mellow white miso. I'll show you the box. This is from Master Miso, but any white miso will do, any organic white miso. And miso is a fermented soybean paste, and it's very useful in cooking, especially plant-based foods. Now, another thing that I want to mention is that as you're blending in a Vitamix, this mixture, it starts generating heat. And whenever you add heat to ground cashews, it thickens it. And so this is a nice creamy texture, but I assure you this will become very firm in the refrigerator. And if it's more firm than you care for, then all you have to do is take out the amount that you want to use at the time and whisk in a little bit of water and to whatever texture you prefer. If you want to make like a cheesy sort of mayonnaise, just make it to a mayonnaise consistency by whisking in a little water. You can do that with a handheld whisk. It's very easy to do. So I'm going to clean up this Vitamix and come back and show you how to make the other kind. Okay, we're back. Now we're going to make another type of cashew cream cheese. And before I forget, one of the things I want to mention is you can pre-soak these cashews if you like. If you have a high-powered blender, you don't have to soak it. And in order to make a cheese sauce, you can use a bechamel sauce or a cream sauce. You can use a regular blender for that. But in order to make a cheese, I've yet to find a blender that will grind up cashews fine enough to make an actual cheese. Unless you're able to use a lot of liquid with it, it won't grind it up well enough. Okay, so we're going to add 1.5 cups of raw cashews. And I don't soak these. And we're using 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. And this is fresh lemon juice. And for this recipe, we're going to have salt. And I use as little as possible. I start out with a half of a teaspoon, which isn't a lot of salt if you consider how many things you're going to be able to do with this. And I poured a little bit too much in there, and I'm going to get rid of some of it. You just want enough salt to take away the pucker power of the lemons, because that will not make it such a pleasant cheese. And so we'll begin by grinding this, and then we'll add as much water as we need to get to the texture that we want. The last cheese, I believe we used almost 2/3 of a cup. And we're going to wear our earplugs because we're protecting our hearing. I know I'm a broken record on that subject, but it's important. Okay, so now looks like a very nice consistency, but I want to taste it to see if we need to add more salt. I think that's just about right. So 1/2 teaspoon of salt is pretty good. Set that there. I am going to add a little bit more water and scrape it down a little bit, just to make sure I've got all the cashews ground up in here. You can see that there's some hanging on to the sides. the advantage of this cream cheese over the other one is that it doesn't really have such a cheesy flavor to it, and that makes it much more versatile. You can use this in making cream sauces, in taking a red sauce. You can add a tablespoon or two of this and make a wonderful red, creamy red sauce. And I keep a bowl of this in my refrigerator at all times, because there's a lot of opportunities to pull out just a tablespoon of this and use it in another recipe. I make wonderful mayonnaises with it. You can make salad dressings, creamy salad dressings, bechamel sauce, hollandaise sauce. There's just by adding a few spices, herbs and spices, you can make all kinds of things with this recipe. So it's a very useful recipe to know and to have on hand. Okay, I'm going to blend this one more time. And again, the longer you blend this, the creamier it becomes, but also the thicker it becomes. When you cook with cashew cream cheese, it will thicken just like heavy whipping cream will. And so it makes it very useful in making sauces. Nuts have a lot of calories, but they don't apparently behave in the same way that fat does. And there's a lot of good information about that on Dr. Greger's excellent site, nutritionfacts.org. And if you go to my site, Time for Change Kitchen, I'll have links to that. Okay, so we're going to transfer this to a, in this case we used right at a half a cup. And we're going to transfer this to a bowl, and this will become much thicker as it sits in the refrigerator. And as you watch my videos, you'll find a lot of different recipes as time goes on using this in different recipes. But you need to have this basic recipe to work with. I used to add a little bit of apple cider vinegar when I made this to get a more tart flavor, but I have discontinued doing that. I just haven't found it really necessary. Okay, so this will go into the refrigerator to chill. So there you have it. Now you have two different ways to make cashew cream cheese. I'm Danielle Bassoni, serving up whole foods for whole health.